Fish on First has partnered with About the Fans to launch a merchandise collection. Rep the FOF logo and more Marlins-inspired apparel. Find it all at aboutthefans.com. Enter coupon code FOF10 at checkout to get 10% off your order. FOF10 for a 10% discount.
This is Xavier Edwards, and you're listening to Fish on First Live.
Hello and welcome to this edition of FOF Live presented by About the Fans. As always, you can check out About the Fans for exclusive FOF merch, and you can use the code FOF10 at checkout for 10% off. On this special Jackie Robinson Day stream here, as the Marlins are taking on the D-backs on a 3-game series before they hit the road. I am, of course, Daniel, your host. We have Eli, Isaac, Nate. We have Kevin joining us in about maybe 10, 15 minutes or so for his press box report. Some big roster moves, injury reports. But first, Eli, talk to us a little bit about that Nats series. It was offense, pitching, and a lot going on good for the Fish in that series.
It went completely different than I thought it would, mainly because of how they won those games, for their offense to be as perky as it was. Across those 3 games, 22 runs scored. And then especially in that last one, separating themselves late. So it's a little hard to parse how much of it is Marlins guys being better than we thought they were versus going up against a Nats team that's in really bad shape right now, especially their bullpen. Their bullpen is trash right now. And that really showed up in the final game of the series. So, yeah, it's hard to tell one way or the other. But we continue seeing these guys, in particular Kyle Stowers, more so than anybody else, hitting really consistently, even against the lefties. As a team, the left-handed batters on this Marlins team are doing so much damage against lefties. They have been platoon-proof in this really small sample. That's probably not going to last. I don't think it is. It doesn't make a lot of sense that they're doing better when they're at a disadvantage platoon-wise than when they have the advantage, but they are so far. And that's been a key difference, is where other teams are making the logical move to match up late in games, and it's totally backfiring on them. That stood out, and they're able to overcome what was a pretty underwhelming Sandy start right in the middle there, where he's pitching on extra rest, having essentially skipped a turn in the rotation while on paternity leave. So for them to win the series with Sandy being mediocre, I think that is kind of the biggest takeaway to me.
Yeah. We'll go ahead and talk a little bit about these other 2 games, the first and the last one. Isaac, what did you see specifically from these 3 games, pitching, hitting-wise? Kyle Quantrill had another shaky start. He did go 5, but he also had 5 walks. Not what you want to see there. The offense looked good, and maybe what else you saw from them?
Well, yeah, let's start with Friday with Edward Cabrera's season debut, right? I think the stuff looked as good as I've seen it with him in a major league mound. I think you got to be really encouraged with that. Obviously, we know this, we've seen this before, so let's take it one day at a time. But you got to be happy with that. And just what a gut-wrenching loss that was in the 8th inning with Anthony Bender giving up that bases clearing double. And you move over to the other pitching performances, Sandy and Kyle Quantrill, like you guys mentioned, a pretty uneven performance from both of those starters. But the fact that the offense was able to pick these guys up, despite them being so-so, was really encouraging. We'll talk about Xavier Edwards, a 7-game hit streak with multiple multi-hit games. He has been just smoking hot. So that's really nice to see. And like I said, just the fact that the offense was able to carry the pitching was not what we thought would be happening so quickly early in spring training. We sort of thought the opposite. And the fact that the offense is doing what it's doing, despite not having Norby or Sanchi, it's been really impressive.
Yeah. Just really great offensively. You mentioned pitching. I was there for that last game, and just the Marlins exploded offensively in that game. Just really dominated the Nats. And someone like Mackenzie Gore, who's usually he's a Marlins killer. Last year, he had an ERA under 1 against the Marlins, and he goes ahead and the Marlins just dominate him for as long as he'd been out there. Matt Mervis coming in with a pinch hit home run, which really flipped the game there and really started that lengthy, dominant rest of the game for the Marlins there with Matt Mervis. Eric Wagaman, who a lot of us have written off, came in, had 5 total bases, and again, just really showed out on that game. But before we get into a little bit more, we do have to bring in one of our guests from Just Baseball, Aram Layden, if he's here. Let's see. Aram, it is always great to have you on. How are you feeling?
Hey.
Start of the brand new year. What's going on?
It's been fun so far, right? Just make sure you can hear me. Am I good?
Yeah,
Oh,
we got you.
awesome. Yeah, it's been fun, man. I'm glad you guys have had some entertaining start to the season and everything here. But this team's been a lot of fun to watch. And now that I live back down here, being able to tune in, it's been enjoyable.
For sure. We should have noted on the previous series, undefeated with Rob Brantley behind the plate so far. On our previous stream, we ripped it to shreds, the fact that they were putting this guy on their active roster for an extended period of time. But so far, so good on the Rob Brantley experience. A name that you probably didn't expect to see on this team again.
No, it's funny. I texted Griff because the last time that Rob Brantley was in the Marlins, him and I were in attendance for a game, and it wasn't that long after we got our driver's license. So it was like we were finally able to drive down to Miami, go to games, whatever it may be. So it is kind of crazy to put it in perspective. He's hung around that long, and it's a testament to him. But yeah, I don't think I would have ever imagined seeing him in anything other than those like neon Marlins jerseys.
Yes. Eli, let's go ahead and talk about the news that came up recently with DFA. Jonah Bride has just not gone on to the start that maybe a lot of us maybe hoped for after he finished that 2024 season. Thought of a lengthy stay, but now getting DFA'd. Eli, talk to us about that DFA Jonah Bride with that picture, with the Jonah Bride DFA, what this means. Jesus Sanchez getting reinstated and soon to be Connor Norby.
Right. Life comes at you pretty fast because this was a small sample struggle for a guy that for a pretty decent sample last year was very productive at the big league level. It's a complicated one, but I think ultimately to boil it down, it's probably the same thing that I would do in this situation just because he was out of options at this moment. I didn't really buy into what he was doing last season either. As consistent as he was that second half of the year, the underlying numbers didn't really support it. Just the quality of contact wasn't anything special for a player that just had a limited skill set outside of that. One thing that stuck out last year, his superpower was just pulling fly balls at an amazing rate so that he was able to squeeze all the power out of his body that he physically could in order to be like a decent middle of the order guy for offense in that situation. And for whatever variety of reasons, he hasn't been able to tap into that going back to spring training, but continuing into the regular season. So he's not hitting the ball hard at all, and he's not hitting it to the right places. So he's getting no results to show for it. And I guess fingers crossed, he may, if other teams are as discouraged by the profile as the Marlins are, maybe he clears waivers, maybe he stays in the organization, and this isn't the last of him. I think it boils down to the fact that they do have bats coming that are also right-handed hitting first base DH types. Augustine Ramirez, Davison De Los Santos, at least Augustine, he'll be up this year. Maybe Davison later on in the season as well, where like they weren't going to carry Bride and Wagman the entire season. I think eventually they were going to have to make a choice between one. And with Wagman, the underlying stuff is more encouraging. The exit velo, the raw power that he has, and some of the same defensive versatility, if you want to call it that. So they had to make a choice, and they made one with the guy that they brought in more recently, and the one that happened to have an amazing game right before this decision. Yeah, so I get it. And I mean, it's a win-win if he somehow clears waivers and stays in the organization. There's still a chance that happens.
Yeah, just something that Nate, we haven't heard from you. Your thoughts on this, especially with Jesus Sanchez getting back, maybe the bigger news out of the two.
Yeah, I think just on Bride, I think their hand was on a force at this point. Now, if you ask me to spring training between him and Stowers, maybe even Griff, who they would pick to send down or just get rid of, my guess would have been Stowers, but just with how good he's been this year, of course, like I said, hitting lefties, doing a lot of damage with the baseball. Like I said, forced hand. So I think Bride, unfortunately, he definitely exceeded my expectations last year, especially second half. Like I said, pulled a lot of balls out. Remember that Philly series? He was really rolling, but you got to do what you got to do. So it's tough to see him go. But with Sanchez back, I'm very excited. A lot of lefties in this outfield. And if Sanchez can kill lefties like they have, then watch out for him. So always excited to watch Jesus Sanchez play baseball. It's being as its guy right there. So the agenda is back on, and I'm excited. Maybe not that he's playing center tonight. I'm kind of surprised that they're going to start him off in center field. He hasn't played that since, I believe, was it 22 the last time he's done it? I think there's a chance. So that experiment's back, but also Jesus Sanchez back in the lineup. So it's a win-win.
Yeah, we'll go a little bit more and talk about this DFA, what it means to the Marlins. But before that, it is 5:40, which means it's time for a press box report. And joining us from the press box, Mr. Kevin Bahat. Kevin, you're in the press box for the upcoming series against the D-backs. You're right across from Arm. You guys are probably looking at each other right now doing this. Kevin, injury news, roster moves. Just give us a little bit of what you're not maybe what you're seeing, but a little bit injury report, roster moves.
Yeah. Norby playing in AAA today, 7 games. I would have to assume this is it for him at this point, or 7 innings. I'm sorry. So maybe back tomorrow or back for the Philadelphia series. So maybe comes on Thursday, travels with the team. That's when they reinstate him. Cronin's going 2 innings tomorrow as well. Yuri's throwing a live BP. So honestly, it's another injury report that's pretty positive. So nothing too bad. And then Nardi and Fortes continue to rehab. I would assume those guys are still pretty far away from returning.
Yeah. And you also saw Weathers throwing into their bullpen, right? Before the game.
Yeah, 25 pitches. Apparently still just a couple of these away from going over to AAA and beginning his rehab.
Yeah. Seeing Yuri. What did Clayton say? Did he mention anything at all? I know Dane is potentially, you said, available tonight?
Yeah, he's available off the bench. Yep, he's off the boot. He looks good, ready to go. So maybe we'll see him at some point this series. But yeah, he's available. So who knows? Maybe we see him tonight.
Yeah. And what do you hope to see tonight, maybe specifically with the Marlins? Maybe pitching wise, hitting wise. I know we're not getting into. You're not going to be here for the lineups and pitching matchups, but what do you hope to see specifically for this game?
Jesus Sanchez in center field is going to be an interesting watch for this whole series. We'll see how that goes. He didn't do it. He didn't play center field in his rehab thing. That's something Arm and I were talking about pregame. It's just he didn't play center field at all. It was DH, right field. So that's going to be an interesting adventure we're going to watch for the next couple of weeks. We'll see how much they put him in center. You would have assumed he'd be the perfect DH for this team.
Mm-hmm.
With how well the defense has been in the outfield with Conine, Hill, and Stowers, and even Dane. So, yeah, that's definitely something I'm looking at. Let's see how Max looks like in another start. But this is the start of a really tough stretch for the Marlins. Arizona for 3, you have Philly for 4 in Philly, and then you have to face the Dodgers and Seattle on the road. So this is the start of what could be the Marlins maybe falling back down to earth, or they keep playing this type of baseball and more or less stay at 500.
Yeah, well, we spoke about Brad the last few minutes, but did Clayton have anything to add in terms of that decision and why he was the odd man out?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of what we were talking about. It's what are you going to do for me now? And he hasn't done much. So he kind of felt like the odd man out. And, I think it's fair to say that Eric Wagman bought himself, the roster spot with this last series against the Nationals. And he's just Brad's been struggling. We'll see if he goes through waivers. I'll be interested to see if he does. So, yeah, just they had enough guys there with drives third base and Norby's coming back too. So I think that they also took that into account.
Yeah. Before we let you go, Kevin, you spoke to 2 former Marlins there.
Just one. Yeah,
What'd they say?
Nothing. There's Hampson straight up told me there's not many familiar faces here. So I found that pretty funny. I spoke to AJ Puck for a bit just off camera, and he's excited to be back here. Just see a couple of guys, some of the relievers that are left on this team, like Andrew Nardi. So yeah, I mean, these guys are on the thick of it in the NL West. They have to face the Dodgers, and they have to go up against a good Padres team. That's a tough division. So they are just trying to stay afloat.
Yeah. All right, Kevin. That's going to do it for you. I know you did a prediction video, so we'll see that later. But, of course, you can follow Kevin on Twitter and catch up for everything that he's going to do at the ballpark.
All right, guys.
All right. I wanted to go ahead and talk to you guys about the outfield position, maybe where the Marlins are at right now. Jesus Sanchez, Kyle Stowers, Griffin Conine, Derek Hill, Dane Myers. That's 5 guys right there. Could it be 5 too many? I want to hear first your thoughts on maybe this entirety of the outfield situation from the Marlins. Because, these 5 guys are arguably been doing pretty good this season. I saw Derek Hill is, I believe, one of the top outfielders in terms of DRS. And so what do you hope to see from this outfield? Maybe what you would do in this situation?
Yeah, I think it's a really cool spot where you can be in where guys are performing so well out of the gate that you can kind of ride the hot hand, right? Are these guys all going to hit this well the entirety of the season? Probably not, but I think you can look at them and say, hey, there's some tangible improvements here. There's roles that these guys can fill, and just kind of continue to just gather more information on what you've got here, because it's clearly a totally different situation in terms of how these guys are preparing before every game, the information they get, and certain players are, I think, benefiting from it a little bit more than others. So I think just getting more ABs and more games to figure that all out. I think that's part of the reason why we're seeing Sanchez in center is like just continuing to get Stowers and Conine those at bats. To the larger the sample, the higher the confidence interval is in that sample, right? So I think that's the key. But if these guys can keep it up, I think it's a big part of why the Marlins have been so exciting so far and surprising. But I think the defensive side of things is absolutely huge, and that's where it is a little bit of a conversation here because not to say Jesus Sanchez completely disrupts that, but putting him in a position where he has not played much of. And the chemistry in the outfield that they have right now is pretty amazing. When you have, whether it's Dane or Derek, everybody seems to work off of each other really well. You don't see guys kind of fighting over balls in the gap. They know each other's range limitations really well. And I think that's a big reason why we've seen very few balls fall. You're going to compromise that a little bit here with just not having the familiarity of these guys all playing out there together. And, maybe Stowers or Conine feels like they need to cover a little bit more ground than they normally do. Maybe that pushes Jesus off. So I'm just really fascinated to see how that all goes. But it's so early in the season, you might as well try it. But I would say if it doesn't go well out of the gate, I would kind of think about adjusting, because those are the little things that are making this Marlins team win ball games, I think, and exceed expectations. And if you want to keep that going, I think the outfield defense needs to be among the top in the game. And that's what it's been out of the gate.
Yeah. I got to ask you something. Obviously, you know this young man very well. And at this time last year, if I told you that Griffin Conine would have started this major league regular season the way he had, both offensively and defensively, would you consider that absolute best case scenario for this young man?
I would have. So from a batting average perspective, absolutely. I think it's been really cool to see how much he's improved in the contact department. And I knew he could defend, and I know he was going to defend his butt off. Like this is and obviously I'm biased. I'm going to support him and have some confirmation bias there. But I think you guys have seen like he's going to play the game as hard as anybody. He's going to do all the little things right, and like he's not going to take a pitch off, whether it's in the field or even at the plate. Of course, you have the concern of like it's the major freaking leagues. Like, are you going to be able to consistently hit the ball as much as he did at the end of last year? And I think if anything, it's been better. So I was expecting him to keep it rolling. The glove would be showing and then get better and better as the year progressed. But to see him just come out this hot and control his ABs the way that he has, the chase rate too is really impressive. But the fact that that's under 20%, like that was at 30% in his big league debut stint. So I would say no. I don't. I always think he can do anything. Obviously, I'm rooting for him, but I don't think I saw 300 batting average through the first dozen games. It's been exciting.
What about his success against left-handed? Because that is something that it has really impressed me. I didn't think they were going to let him face much left-handed pitching. They hadn't in the beginning, but now he has really turned, especially this series against the Nationals. Holy crap, he is hitting left-handers at an exceptional rate.
That's one thing I would have told you that I don't know if it would have been this good out of the gate, but I knew it would be better. He worked on that all off season, man, like dialing up the machine. I was out there some days feeding the machine for him at a ridiculously miserable angle to simulate lefties with ride and then lefties with sink and then lefty breaking balls. And like he was grinding that all year long to prove that, he could be an everyday hitter. And, I knew it would be better. I didn't think it would be this good. Like that Mackenzie Gore swing, on a 3-2 fastball off the foot away to scorch that up the middle, the Minter backside double as well. Like those are swings. I didn't know he had that in his bag just yet, but I did know it was going to be better just off the work he put in. But I think he's starting to feel it too, where it's like I can hit these lefties even better than maybe I thought.
Yeah, this is a look at that trend. I mentioned it earlier and brought it up again just now. As a team, lefty batters on the Marlins are hitting 327 against lefty pitching, a 975 OPS as a team. It's Stowers, it's Conine, even Paulie in a small sample. So
I really think it's the machine work they're putting in before these games. Like they're battling out there. Like the tougher reps may even be before the game, where they're getting angled machines, curveballs, fastballs, whatever. And if they're facing a lefty, like they're getting left on left machine work. It's intense, and I do think that it's helping these guys big time to be able to do it.
Definitely.
Yeah. has been really interesting there. But we'll move on a bit. We have Carver here. We have not talked to Carver 1 second. That may be a good thing, but especially for this next topic here. Well, let's go ahead. Baseball America released their new top 100, and including that, there is a new Marlin inside that top 100. And Baseball America also has this prospect as a number 3 Marlin as well, and that is Joe Mack. Yes, Joe Mack as top 100 prospect according to Baseball America. Carver, I want to hear from you. What maybe from Joe Mack, from his point getting drafted to where he is now, where Baseball America has him a top 100. Where have you seen him change for him to get to this point and just so closely about to make the majors?
Yeah, he should have already been there. I'll say that for a fact. It's not surprising to me because a lot of national outlets don't usually talk well about the Marlins. But this guy is good. After last year, you can kind of see it, especially the biggest thing is the power. The power improvements are his biggest thing. Really good. Just killed the ball with Pensacola mostly. I mean, to go from 6 home runs to 24, that's not by mistake, especially in Pensacola where it's not that easy to hit home runs. Power or patience numbers are okay. Strikeouts a little bit high, but he walked a bit, which kind of excused it. And then this year, it's a small sample, but he's off to another ridiculous start. And he's always been a good defensive catcher. So deserved. Should have been there earlier, but no, this is deserved for him. And hopefully national outlets will continue to come around on the Marlins system has vastly improved.
Yeah, and with that also, with Joe Mack getting up there, I want to hear from Aram. Just what do you hope to see from him? Maybe what he's also bringing to the Marlins as well, maybe as this top catcher in the Marlins. And it seems like the Marlins have been really looking for that catcher they can have long term.
Yeah, I mean, the glove, the development of that side of things has really just been amazing to see. And he's always had those tools, right? And that's been the calling card to a degree. But to see him progress into what's comfortably a plus defender now, the threshold to become a big league catcher offensively is so low because there's so much that is demanded of the defensive side of things if you are a good defender. And to see where he's at there, to be able to just run into homers now the way that he has, the approach has gotten so much better. Look, he's probably going to swing and miss a decent bit at the highest level. Like, I think the big thing to monitor is how he's handling secondary stuff. But if you crush fastballs and hangers as a plus defending catcher with low chase rates, you can make a really nice living. You can talk about Cal Raleigh. Like, if he's a Cal Raleigh starter kid, I think you're in a really good spot. You're quite happy with that. So, like, if it's 60, 70% of Cal Raleigh, the Marlins have a good catcher for a long time. So I think that side of it has been really encouraging, where, like, the baseline you can feel really good about, where even if it's below average hit, which I think he's starting to give you more confidence it can be better than that, he's going to run into his 20 to 25 homers. He's going to play fantastic defense. And now, as Alex mentioned, he's going to walk, and that keeps getting better and better, the chase rate side of things as well. So I think you got to feel really good about his chances of impacting the big league team.
Yeah, especially, I wanted to ask you guys with Joe Mack there, and you mentioned Thomas White, Starlin Caba, Joe Mack. One name that maybe some people might be wondering when seeing that list is Noble Meyer. Coming just so long ago, it seemed like Noble Meyer was right there with Thomas White. Could he be the number one guy? Is it Thomas? Is it Noble? Which guy there is going to be the top prospect for the Marlins? But now Thomas White had just skyrocketed to the point where now Noble Meyer isn't even in the top 100, especially in the top 3 for the Marlins. Carver, what has happened with Noble Meyer, with him having maybe this fall off? I don't want to say it's a big fall off, but maybe to the point where now, there's an open spot for a Marlins top 100 and it's Joe Mack instead of Noble Meyer.
I think a lot of it had to do with last year. We talked to him in spring training. He looked great in spring training, by the way. Changing up a grip on one of his pitches, going more sweeper, which a lot of Marlins are doing instead of slider. That pitch looks good. He looks healthy and he looks awesome. And he's saying a lot of things that lead me to believe and Kevin to believe that he is maturing quickly in terms of how he thinks about baseball, in terms of how he's digesting, how he's being coached by a new system, as you guys all know. But yeah, he's dealt with a leg and back injury for most of last year. Went up to Beloit and really struggled because of that. Wasn't landing properly. It wasn't something that needed IL, but it was just something that was throwing off his release and delivery. So I think that was a big reason for the numbers that he put up in Beloit, and a big reason why a lot of people have lost confidence in him. But I think he will definitely be back if he is fully healthy this year. That pitcher has great raw stuff. The maturity, I think he needed to mature a little bit mentally. I mean, I say that a lot about high school players that face failure for the first time. I think that Noble was no exception. The injury just kind of added to it. But man, he looked really good in spring training, and I'm stoked for Noble. So I think that's the reason why. Just to look a bit raw last year, and then the injury didn't help things. But I think this year, with those changes that he's made, including mentally, I think he's going to get even better as long as he's healthy. So I think he'll be back.
Yeah, before we get into maybe talking a bit about Sandy and some trade rumors, I want to get Arm's thoughts again with Noble Meyer. Just maybe what he has to do to change to maybe get up to that point where he's in that top two for the Marlins. He's there competing with Thomas White, to where now maybe they have him a bit falling off, a bit for him just to come up hopefully soon.
Yeah, it was interesting, and I think the injuries that Alex mentioned there probably explains kind of the dichotomy and stuff you saw between the first half and the second half, where in the first 10 starts of the season last year, his fastball averaged 94. The subsequent 10 starts, or 9 starts, I should say, he averaged like 92 and change. It was close to 92 flat. Then he started to nibble a little bit more. I think there was a little bit less confidence in the stuff, but also if he's battling injuries with his landing spot, things like that, like that's going to contribute to that walk rate kind of jumping as well. I think it's also just trying to figure out what works best arsenal-wise for what is a really unique release and a unique throw for him. But even in this first start this year, the velo still down a bit. He averaged 91.8 in that outing, but he was around the zone, and I think that's the most important thing. And he's definitely a guy that can get away with the velocity being a bit lower because the late arm side run he can get. But I think it's trying to figure out what he wants to do with his fastball too, right? Where it's sometimes he's trying to throw that more of a four-seamer, and it kind of sits in the dead zone. Other times it gets more arm side run, and that might be a more effective offering there, especially with the horizontal separation he can create with that now sweepier slider. That sweepier slider looks like it can be gross, as Alex alluded to. Like he only threw 12 in the first start. He got 16 inches of horizontal on that. Like that's a really natural throw for him. So leaning into that would be really interesting. I do think, though, just seeing the way he throws and seeing the way he goes about it, like there's going to be a level of needing to shed reliever risk, and I think that's going to come from success and consistency with the fastball and just command overall.
Yeah, he said it has the potential, not to go like too deep on the scientific stuff, because I don't know how many people are too interested, but I don't want to bore people. But he said that he thinks that he could possibly get 18 to 20 inches of horizontal, which would be absolutely insane. So, watch that pitch, that sweeper pitch. Watch the pitch.
Yeah. Let's go ahead now before we head into our break and before we preview this Diamondback series. You have to go ahead and mention Sandy Alcantara. Some news coming out with him. Is he going to get traded? Ken Rosenthal reported going on foul territory that teams maybe are going to want to see a little more from Sandy than what they're seeing now. Yes, Sandy's healthy, but there are points maybe he's not looking the sharpest. We see his last couple outings, maybe not the Sandy of old. Nate, I want to hear from you about Sandy. Trade rumors are we're going to hear up until the trade deadline. If it's a situation where he's not going to get traded up until that deadline, or maybe he's more of a Luis Arraez type deal, where maybe he's going to get traded maybe in the early parts of the season.
I mean, I definitely think it's valid that other teams want to see more from Sandy. I mean, they're going to give up a huge haul for him. So especially with an ace like him, you definitely want to make sure you're getting at least a B or A version of Sandy. So that makes a lot of sense to me. I think he's still just shaking off rust. I mean, 4 walks. He's still struggling with command a little bit. Not as sharp as usually is. Even not as sharp as we saw in spring training, going deeper into games for the first time in almost 2 years. So it made sense. I honestly think that it's going to be drawn out past the deadline just to make sure, or not past the deadline, but up until the deadline, just to make sure that, like I said, teams know what they're getting with Sandy, and they're getting a version that, can lead them to a playoff push or push them deep in the playoffs. So I think it's going to be drawn out. Get ready for all the talks. It's going to be a while, but I say as of now, I've been wanting to keep Sandy, so that's just my opinion. But watch see how it all plays out.
Yeah, Isaac, with Sandy there, what would you like to see more from Sandy up and coming, where he may potentially be traded? And what's the perfect deal for Sandy? Because this is again ace of a rotation, a guy again coming off TJ as a team friendly contract. What can he even propose for this? It has to be multiple top prospects, 3-4 players. Like, what would even happen to be able to get Sandy?
This is a weird one. This is a very weird. From what I've heard, if it were up to Peter Bendix and company, I think this trade would happen sooner rather than later. I think that there's some hesitation coming from up top, from the ownership. I think that Bruce Sherman knows that if he presses approve on this trade, it will be unlike any trade that they've done under this ownership group. So I think that's sort of what's holding things up. I think other teams do want to wait and see what exactly they are getting. They have so many years of control left with Sandy Alcantara, so maybe that doesn't make the Marlins need to do this right now. But I think if it were up to Peter Bendix, I think they would do it in the same timeline as the Luis Ariz trade went down as well. When it comes to what it would take, a name I know I was talking with some guys, some other reporters last time I was there. It would take a Roman Anthony type guy. I think they're gonna go for quality over quantity this time around. I know they didn't do that with the Tanner Scott deal. They didn't really do that with the Luis Ariz. Actually, in my opinion, they did. But I think it's gonna be a top 10 overall major league prospect. That's what they're gonna be going for. I think with the Cubs, they wanted Casey, but I don't think that's enough for Luzardo. They wanted that, but I think for Sandy, it's gonna take a hell of a lot more, given that it's 3 + 3 years at a very efficient deal. But the name I heard was it's going to have to be something like Roman Anthony. I don't know if the Red Sox would do that, but it's going to be an interesting one for sure. I don't think they would, but it's going to take something crazy like that.
Right. Yeah, that's a tricky part here because his status, like he's an icon sort of around the Marlins, and he has this aura around him even across the league. And I think the return is going to be underwhelming to at the end of the day, depending on how he performs. I mean, maybe he really fully taps back into 2022 form and forces an irrational decision. But otherwise, the caliber of prospect that might be valued the same as Sandy under these conditions, those prospects just don't get traded simply because of how efficient they are when they make it to the big leagues and how cost efficient they are. Even if it's a fair on paper value, those guys are simply untouchable. And Sandy he's touchable because of the team's current situation and how questionable they are competitive wise, even though it's an improved farm system, not an elite farm system at this moment. And the temptation that you have this piece that could make a really meaningful jump in terms of the caliber of talent that you have under your control, that would all actually be on the same timeline. Whereas Sandy is just a little bit off the timeline of everybody else because of how long he's been around in the majors to this point. So this is obviously a story that we got to continue following as the season goes on. I've always leaned towards the fact that it's going to go pretty close to the deadline, especially now that the team has given themselves a little bit of cushion before they're totally embarrassing and out of the race. But even in between, to establish themselves, to engage as many teams as they possibly can, even though there are some obvious landing spots now. The longer you wait, the more teams inevitably are going to have either injuries or underperformance in their rotation. That there's just going to be so many teams involved with that, and they're going to have leverage going down to the wire. So the risk, of course, is that he gets hurt at that time of year, because Luzardo was somebody that they thought they could have gotten a lot in return for last summer, and he has a year that's just derailed by injury, even if it's not a long-term concern. So it's a tough spot, but thankfully he has such a long track record prior to this, and his upside is pretty obvious if he's simply available. That I do think this is going to be something that hangs over the team pretty deep into July.
Yeah, I want to hear from R made a face there right when Isaac mentioned Roman Anthony. Just for you, what's the package for Sandy look like? What does the team have to give up, or what the Marlins do you think are potentially looking for?
Well, and I totally get it. I would be asking for the same thing, but also I think that actually came up in the Just Baseball show, where I think Peter just asked me, theoretically, would you, if you're on the Red Sox side, trade Roman Anthony for him? And I said no. And there's very few. He might be the only prospect in all of baseball that I would say that about, just because you see the potential of what he can be, superstar. You got me?
Yeah, now we do.
Okay. But, the question kind of is, how many teams are in a position where they can reasonably meet that price and not absolutely destroy their farm system? The obvious and brutal answer is the Dodgers. The Dodgers can make it to where you just can't say no. I think the Cubs could put together still a really, really good package, but that would be the opposite of what Isaac was saying, which would be more quantity over, I don't want to say quality because it's still really good quality, but you're not getting that quote unquote can't miss prospect. So, there's not a lot of teams that have a blue chip prospect that they couldn't use quite soon. Now I look at the D-backs, they don't really need to load it up, but you need a Jordan Lawler type of situation where he's in a lot of package where, okay, we don't need him, we just locked up Perdomo. there's not a lot of situations like that in Major League Baseball because, as Eli had mentioned, like you take the opportunity to have 6 years of control of a player that can impact you. So my question to you guys is, because I think you guys have a better pulse on the team in general and stuff like that, is if Sandy's throwing pretty well and the team is playing pretty well, he does have 2 more years of control after this. So like, do you, if nothing comes across, do you just take that underwhelming deal, or do you let him pile up 180 innings this year and then see how it goes going into the next season because you got 2 more years?
I mean, if he gets on pace to be throwing 180, 200 innings in July, some team is going to be desperate. And I think if you wait till the end of the season, in the offseason, yeah, you might get a lot, but I usually tend to be in favor of trading when teams are desperate. Another team that I want to throw at you would be the Mariners. It's sort of a similar situation to the Cubs, where you may not have that top 10 overall prospect, but they could put together a pretty decent package. But to answer your question, we did this in we did the roundtable, which what would we do with Sandy Alcantara? I think there's no way that the Marlins are being competitive in the next 2 years. You might as well get everything you can, unless the offer really is underwhelming, like you said. But I would be on the side of trading him as soon as possible.
Yeah, I want to hear from.
I was just going to say, the tough part with that is the optics, and like I understand why, ownership wouldn't want to do that, because he does kind of have a different gravity to him than really anybody else on this team does. And I do wonder that if this team just can surprise enough and hang around 75 wins, and you look at the fact that they have nothing on the payroll for next year, and you could spend and actually add a couple pieces here or there and still be well under any normal payroll in Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
Could you talk yourself into it? And it's not just the front office. I still think the front office would want to cash in, but is that something that comes from the top of Bruce that says like, hey, we're not that far away. Can we do it? It's far-fetched, but like I do feel like with every game the Marlins win, it almost gives them a little bit more leverage too. Because you've got to make me do this. Because at the end of the day, we got him for 2 more years. And I don't think teams believe that right now. Like I think teams still assume he's going to be traded. That's why you have Mets media members asking Mets players what it's like to potentially, what it would be like to acquire him after you just faced him, which is bizarre. And you've got national TV games for the Cubs where they're talking about Justin Steele going down, and then they have a whole piece on Sandy. It's bizarre. And I think that just shows you kind of the way the outside is looking at it. So the more that you can quell that narrative a little bit, the more leverage you have too. And I do agree though, Isaac, at that point, it may actually be like real posturing at the same time. If a Dodgers or Mariners, another pitcher goes down, or one of these loaded farm systems gets desperate, like this is a trade that a GM can make and know that it's not going to cost him his job, because even if you overpay for Sandy, he's going to give you innings at like a low 4s, worst case scenario, and he's going to be a really solid pitcher. And that's the worst case scenario. So I think GMs could be a little bit more willing to take a chance here, because you don't want to have that trade that hangs over your head that it's like, oh, he made that move and it set us back. I don't think any GM is going to be afraid about making a Sandy trade that sets you back, because I think the only thing that makes that trade not work is injury, and that's not something that's going to, hurt a front office member's, credibility.
Now, Carver, I want to hear from you on this situation with Sandy. What would you do? How would you even handle it? And maybe, again, like Ara mentioned with the optics, it just seems like people are just waiting for the Marlins to do it, not just win, but when is it going to happen? Not if it's going to happen, to win.
Yeah, I would be on the side of trading him sooner rather than later. If they're going to pull the plug on this, it would be very unpopular amongst fans, as we all know. But the Marlins, I don't think are, not that they're not worried about that, but that stone's already kind of cast. They're already not very popular with the fans, anyways. And I think that the longer you wait, yes, Sandy's going to be good, I think, and no matter what year he's pitching, and you can make the argument that he would probably be at his best in a contract year. I think Sandy's that kind of guy, but you lose value in a potential trade if you trade a guy in a contract year or closer to a contract year. So I would probably try to maximize value on what will be their best trade chip we've ever seen, in trading this pitcher as soon as possible. I mean, they traded some big name players. They traded Miguel Cabrera. Like, they traded Hall of Famers. We know it. Sandy is on that trajectory, I think. But I think this could be the biggest name that they've traded in franchise history. You need to maximize value on that. You need that blue chip prospect. The Marlins haven't had that blue chip prospect. You can make the argument for Thomas White, but before him, And, the rest of the system right now, the Marlins haven't had that blue chip, definite slam dunk prospect in a long time. So if you can get that and you're staring that ability in the face, you have to do it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I think we'll end it there for those trade rumors on Sandy. But let's go ahead and talk a little bit about this series between the Marlins and the Arizona Diamondbacks. Eli, if we can get those lineups up, we can go ahead and see what the Marlins will be facing in Arizona, because I know Arizona does have some injuries. Ketel Marte on the IL. I don't know if he's playing today, but I know he was taking ground ball work earlier in the week.
Oh, I forgot that there's a series that starts today. Former Marlin Garrett Hampton will be batting ninth. Diamondbacks team is a fun team to watch. I'm very excited to watch these 3 games for sure.
We'll start off with Isaac right there, what he just said with Arizona, and go ahead and talk a little bit about them. Corbin Carroll, Gerardo Perdomo, Pavin Smith, Josh Naylor, former Marlin there. Eli, when you're looking at this Arizona team, it's a lot of red, a lot of names that stand out. What really do you like with this Arizona team? Maybe who do the Marlins really have to look at? Maybe someone that can potentially give them some trouble.
Yeah, well, I love Corbin Carroll. I actually remember pretty vividly around this time last year when Aram did this big breakdown about why he was slumping so much early last year, and the concerns about his shoulder and how it was so odd how out of sync he had fallen from the previous year, and then the second half of last year he took off again, and he led me to a fantasy baseball championship. As you see right now, I mean, even on his best days, for him to be making that much quality contact, a guy that has 80 speed and at the same time is also crushing the ball as well. At this point, he's probably on pace for 50 home runs. Even if that fades a little bit, he's amazing, and there's a reason why he's in there every day. Even with they are going to miss Ketel Marte in the meantime. A guy that has come up in our staff chat recently for whatever reason, Geraldo Perdomo. He's been playing very well, and he himself, they signed him to an extension. I think it was just this past offseason, and it has turned into, it's looking very good so far with the fact that he's a solid offensive player in addition to being the sure-handed defender over there. So yeah, it's right on the top. That's really intriguing to me. And with Eugenio Suarez, he's such a fascinating guy where he's had some inconsistency in his career, but you really zoom out and you look at his career production in the homer department.
Crazy. It's actually really underrated.
Yeah, it's been awesome. And so this year he's hitting 150, but he's also an above average overall hitter because he slugs so well. So he's a fascinating guy, extremely streaky, all things considered. But I enjoy watching him when he's not striking out. He's doing damage. So yeah, this team overall is it's still pretty talented, even with Marte missing a little bit of time. I think Gabriel Moreno, he's off to a relatively slow start for a guy that looked like he was trying to knock on the door in terms of the top tier of overall catchers in the game, but he's pretty dangerous. So
it's just third.
What's that?
Pavin Smith hitting third. That kind of
he's been a Jock Peterson replacement. One of the only major losses from last year is losing Jock, and Pavin Smith is a very similar prototype. That's just a younger version that is mashes against righties. As we know, this Marlins pitching staff is almost entirely right-handed, so that's going to be a big part of this series, and it's why this matchup isn't all that favorable, just because of all the left-handed hitters that the D-backs have that can do damage.
You have to look at Naylor. I mean, that guy is awesome. I liked him when he was a prospect, dating back to his days with the Greensboro. I think he was with. That guy mashes baseballs, just destroys baseballs. He's amazing with the power, and then to surmount it is that he doesn't really strike out. I mean, look at the strikeout rate here early in the year is 8.8%, which is insane. He sees pitching well. He mashes pitching, 93 mile an hour exit velocities. This guy hits, and I think he's one of the more underrated pure hitting threats, especially for power in the league. He's really is that good at hitting. Leaves a little bit to be desired defensively, but when you're hitting like he does, I mean, just because he's defensively limited, not because he's a bad first baseman, but defensively limited, yeah, you got to put him at first base or DH, but that dude is a pure hitter. I really like that bat, just balancing the power with good patience. Can't say enough about him. Very underrated hitter. I think he's amongst one of the best, better power hitters in baseball. Very good.
Yeah, I'm with you. And honestly, what sits out to me about this lineup is how hot they've all, pretty much all of them all started their season. I mean, Carroll, Perdomo, Smith, I think, and Gino has 5 homers. He's tied with Matt Mervis for second in the NL. And even Alex Thomas, who started last year, he's hitting in the 300s, already has 10 RBIs, which is more than half that he had last year. So a guy that really started last year, so who was looked at as a big-time player for this D-backs team, all the way down there at 8th, right above Garrett Hampson's having a big start to the year. And like we said, Isaac's boy, Geraldo Perdomo, dazzling there. I think he has 13 RBIs. So going to be a very tough challenge for this Marlins pitching staff to try and slow these guys down.
Yeah, now let's go ahead and look at this Marlins lineup before you go and watch the pitching matchup as well, primarily for this weekend. We have Edwards, Jesus Sanchez making his return, Eric Wagaman third, Matt Mervis hitting cleanup. Seeing this Marlins lineup, we have Griff down there in the 7th hole, but really Matt Mervis coming back up with the DH position and just really how hot he's been. Nate mentioning tied for 2nd in the NL in home runs, had that pinch hit home run that really changed the game. Just what a revelation Matt Mervis has been, especially in the deal that Phoenix did. Brujan Mervis, who would have thought?
Yeah, it's funny. It's like two of the Marlins in my time. I was still doing Locked On Marlins when VR was traded out. And he was the guy that drove me as nuts as any player had driven me when he was playing with the Marlins. And nothing against Vidal Brujan personally, but I could not stand to watch that guy play either. And then he got traded for another one of my friends, so it worked out really well in that regard. But it was a great trade in the respect that like Mervis has been one of the best power hitters in the upper minors. And I understand it's a big jump to the major leagues, but at the same time, those numbers were insane. You look at 2022; it's one of the best minor league seasons in the last 15 years. That wasn't in the PCL, so like. You get a free opportunity to give that guy some runway. He never got runway in Chicago, and being able to get that has been really, exciting. And I think we're seeing like this guy crushes stuff down, and it's been trying to figure out, okay, big league pitchers are going to pitch him a little bit differently. How do I, hedge some of the weaknesses, lean into the strengths? You see, like he can golf balls out dead central and then 2 balls down below the zone. Like that is an incredible strength. And he continues to lean into that more and more now and has been able to kind of mitigate some of the issues at the top. I mean, if he runs into 25 home runs this year or 20, whatever it may be, like you got him for free. You got him for a DFA candidate. So I think it's a great addition. And, I'm biased with him as well, but I'm really excited that he's proven that, he can hit homers at the highest level if he's just given some runway. And the Cubs, they didn't give him a chance to even get his feet wet, which I get. It's a different roster situation.
Yeah. Eli, again with this lineup, Eric Wagaman third. Is that more so just having the really hot hand for Wagaman during their from Sunday, or maybe what really Wagaman you think Clayton McCullough likes so much?
That's a good question. I don't know why he's quite that high against, unless Merrill Kelly has some unorthodox splits that I'm not aware of that makes it in play. I get why he's in the lineup, all things considered. And he was somebody, even when the height of complaints were coming in just a few days ago about him in the middle of last week, the underlying stuff was a little bit more encouraging. There was reason to believe he would have a role on this team. I don't think he's going to play all that often moving forward. I think he's going to, especially with Sanchez back in there, there's now more than enough guys to go around at DH. And then with Mervis playing a lot of first base, that I think it's mostly going to be Wagman platooning for the near-term future. Against lefties, but yeah, you just got to give him a lot of credit for the great game that he had on Sunday. That might be part of it. Is that as about as good an individual offensive game as somebody could have every single plate appearance. So yeah, I think it just boils down to that, where this might be the only start he gets in this series.
Yeah, just Merrill Kelly does have very, very slight reverse splits where he does give up 14 points more in his slugging percentage to right-handed batters. So maybe that's what Clayton McCullough was thinking.
Well, we'll see there. But before we get into the pitching matchups, I want to ask Nate about his favorite player there, Xavier Edwards. Maybe how you've seen him going on this season. I just feel like watching him, maybe defensively, it's still a bit of a learning curve to him. I just feel like at some point it's like, maybe he might miss a ball going to the dirt. Maybe he misses a throw there. Just what have you seen completely from Xavier Edwards? And do you really trust his defense for 162?
Honestly, as much as I do like Xavier, I'm still not all the way there on his defense. Like you said, he gets to the ball fine, but his throwing number is still not that. His first step is and him throwing to first has always been a concern, even though he did work out his arm a lot in the offseason. But I'll go back to his pros. He's been hitting the shit out of the ball recently. 7-game hit streak, I think. Stealing a lot of bags, just getting on base. Earlier this season, he was, kind of just popping balls around, just seeing, and a lot of infield signals, just getting on off luck. But he's making a lot of quality contact recently, and he's really just doing what he did last year pretty much, and stealing a lot of bats. So love what I'm seeing out of him. It's always good to see him get hot. I'll talk about Otto Lopez too. It's his year anniversary since the Marlins picked him up, or since his Marlins debut, one or the other. Alex Crutchett wrote a great piece about it. You guys should go check that out. But he's been struggling a little bit recently as well. He's hitting 111 since the Braves series. It's kind of bad luck. He's been hitting the ball pretty well, but hopefully a couple more can fall from this series, and a little, anniversary series for Otto.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and look at these pitching matchups before we head into prediction time. And some very interesting pitching matchups here. Max Meyer, Brendan Pfaadt, Edward Cabrera, Eduardo Rodriguez, and tonight with Connor Gillespie and Merrill Kelly. Eli, talk to us about these matchups. Who do you like to see? What matchup really intrigues you the most, and what Marlins starter are you watching?
Yeah, for one, I just reminded myself that Edward Cabrera started on Jackie Robinson Day last year. That is in our photo library for some reason with the 42 on the side of his head.
That's
there's a fun fact. I'm sure people remember years from now that Connor Gillespie started Jackie Robinson Day 2025. But it's got to be. I continue to be really impressed by Max and how things have translated exactly the way you would have hoped coming out of spring training, where he showed up as a much improved guy. And every start to this point, there's been encouraging details of it. And his last start, the most encouraging of all, taking a no-no into the 7th inning, pretty deep, in a way that this is another big challenge for him. You could say even a bigger challenge than facing the Mets in his previous outing. So I'm absolutely fascinated to see how Max does in that opportunity. His rotation spot is very secure for the time being. This is actually uncharted territory compared to last year. On this date, do I have that right? That it was this exact date last year that he was sent down to Jacksonville, something like that. So this is now a very different circumstance for him, where he actually gets a chance to legitimize himself as not just a starter, but potentially a good one. And this is every single start with Max, to me, even more so than Sandy. I'm most intrigued to watch Max on a start-by-start basis to see how he progresses and how legit it is. There were pretty big holes in his game last year, and to this point, he's taken steps to close some of those holes.
Yes, it was a year ago, by the way. April 15, 2024, he was sent down.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, so I think if anyone else has to mention anything, Aram, anything for you, we're looking at these pitching matches, Brandon Pfaadt, Eduardo Rodriguez, Max Meyer, who's been surprised. I don't even want to say surprising, but has been fairly good so far to start the season.
I think they need another good one out of Max. The way Brendan Pfaadt's been throwing, but I think people look at this outing. I know Merrill Kelly's ERA is inflated, but it was really one bad outing and 2 fine ones. So you look at it, you are looking at potentially a little bit of a starting pitching disadvantage. Game 3 was kind of a toss-up. We'll see how either of those guys look, but I think Max can really set the tone here in this series, and not even set the tone, I guess, because it's a second game, but make a difference here and potentially give them an edge, because he has been pitching like one of the better young arms in baseball. So being able to outpitch Pfaadt, I think would be huge for them, and it's going to be a bullpen battle too, to a degree, especially with Merrill probably not being stretched out too much yet, and they don't go too deep with Gillespie. This Diamondbacks bullpen's been one of the most impressive in Major League Baseball so far this year. So that's going to be tough if you don't get on the starters. Like, this bullpen is good. You're not going to score on Justin Martinez. Probably not going to score on AJ Pop. So I think getting to the starters is going to be huge, and they got a chance to do that because they're avoiding Corbin Burns, who I know hasn't been great, and Zach Gallen. So I think that's the key. It's getting on these starters, which D-backs can hit, and that bullpen is potentially elite.
I think that Aram kind of hits it, and Eli just said it as well. With how good Max has already been, and I've noted this already like a couple of times, but with how good he's already been this year, it's really just been off of his old strengths that we all know him for, which is fastball and slider. Yeah, the command and control is great, and yeah, he's healthy, which is the big part for him. But I'll say it again, I think he could be even better if this sweeper fully comes in. He hasn't really had that pitch yet in any of his starts. So if that sweeper comes in, he's already going 6-7 innings with no hits, as Eli said. If that sweeper comes in and he is even better, this is a guy that's going to open a lot more eyes than he already has. So watch the sweeper. I'm intrigued to see how he starts to incorporate that more. Changeup too. That was before this year. Our questions about Max kind of hinged on, is he going to develop a changeup? And he started to do that. He's starting to throw that pitch more as well. I think he throws it a lot. I think Sean noted this the last stream that we did. He throws it a lot to lefties, but not a lot to righties. So maybe he needs a little bit more confidence to throw it to same side hitting. We'll see how that continues to develop in terms of how he's using that pitch more against righties. That was a good call up by Sean, by the way. And sinker is there too. So he has that pitch in his back pocket if he needs it. So we've seen the slider, we've seen the fastball. We knew those were there. I want to see more of the sweeper, man, because I think if he starts to incorporate that more, throw the changeup a little bit more to righties, he could be even a lot better than what we've already seen, which is pretty damn good. So pitch usage for Max is huge. Nobody's mentioned him yet, but I love this guy. I want to see Connor Gillespie throw more than 75 pitches. This guy gets outs. He just gets out. He's not dominant. He's not going to be an ace or anything like that. He's come up, become the fifth starter, and cemented himself in that position because he just gets outs. And his last two starts have been good, and they've only let him go 75 pitches. One was 5 innings, one was 4 innings. Let this guy go. As long as he's getting outs, let him go deeper. I want to see more of Gillespie. Hopefully quality start time will be massive.
All right, Eli, I think it's the perfect time for our prediction. Well, let's get that video and see the leaderboard.
This is prediction time.
I don't want to toot my own horn here, but I'm really good at this.
Prediction time, which I have not been off to a good start in this regard right here. But yeah, you requested the leaderboard, which is not flattering to any of us this point of the season.
Last week's prediction.
Yeah, let's just get to the overall leaderboard for people to see. Our staffers, our stream guests, and our valuable super subs. It is being dominated by super subs. All the underlines are our staffers. So the top 5 spots are all of you guys in the audience right there.
Oh.
Thomas Joseph, I know he's watching, tied for first. And I'm barely making the cutoff to fit on the screen at this point. Just 3 points through the first 5 series of the season. How many games the Marlins are going to win, who the series MVP is going to be. And that is how it works to this point. But yeah, Daniel and Nate are tied, it seems. Most respectable among our staffers right there. So yeah, after we'll buy Arm one more minute to get to the end of the national anthem at the ballpark right there. And then we'll go into the predictions that we have. It gives me a chance to queue up the backgrounds that we got. I can briefly show what our super subs have submitted so far. It's a pretty mixed bag.
Burger.
Yeah. Noah making an appearance in there. Pretty split down the middle between the D-backs and the Marlins, taking 2 out of 3. Only one sweep in there from Thomas Joseph to this point, but he's the one that's tied atop the leaderboard, so he knows something. We'll take a moment to play the video from the ballpark. Pretty quick one from Kevin and his special guest at Lone Depot.
Alrighty, Marlins and Diamondbacks 3-game set. I'm going to go with the D-backs taking 2 out of 3, and Lourdes Gurriel will be your series MVP.
I'll go with the Diamondbacks as well, 2 out of 3. And my MVP is going to be Corbin Carroll.
Alrighty, back to you, Eli.
Okay. Surprised you didn't go with Eugenio Suarez.
I think Arm's still standing up there, doing for the national anthem, but maybe we'll save him for last here.
Yeah, we'll take our chances. We'll start it, and then we'll bring him in either right before me or right after me at the end to see if he makes the cut.
All right. So prediction time. As always, you can choose who's going to win the series, and your MVP is to be from either team, hitter, pitcher. Does not have to be the same when you pick your prediction. And let's start with Mr. Nate.
All right, this D-backs team is hot. The Marlins are even facing their 2 best guys with Zach Allen and Corbin Burns, but they're still getting some pretty good starters, all 3 of them. So I think the D-backs will take 2 out of 3 here. And for series MVP, we just touched on it. I think Eugenio Suarez and have a couple did last night.
Ooh, Alex Carver. And you're muted.
Well, what I can say is I love Max. You guys know that. And I think Gillespie is an underrated king. So we're going to go with the Marlins getting 2 out of 3 on the backs of their pitching. Max Meyer is going to win his start. I think Gillespie hopefully goes deeper into a game tonight and saves the bullpen a bit and puts up some good numbers. So I will say on the backs of pitching, Marlins win 2 out of 3, but I'll go unorthodox and say that a D-back will win MVP. I talked about it before. Josh Naylor's just so good. Can't go against him. So former Marlin Josh Naylor MVP, but the Marlins will get this series, I think.
All right, Mr. Isaac.
The Marlins have had one left-handed pitcher all season. I think this is the lineup that exposes that. Diamondbacks take 2 out of 3. Geraldo Perdomo, MVP.
Ooh, nice. I'll go up now. I think with the Arizona team, they're just hitting wise, it'll be too much for the Marlins to handle, too much for Gillespie to handle as well. I think Arizona takes 2 out of 3, and MVP. Let's go with Corbin Carroll. Eli.
Okay. I will keep it quick. D-backs winning 2 out of 3 in this one. The Marlins fall down to 500 to finish off this homestand. MVP going with Eugenio Suarez. I'm going to continue to lean on power hitters and trust him to knock in a few extra base hits over the course of these 3 games.
All right. Lastly, Mr. Armley.
I don't know. I don't have a great feeling about this one. I'm going to go D-backs sweep. I think the offense is going to really take them. So I also think this. Peyton Smith, I think, has the MVP stretch here. We just Steve I mentioned it's a pretty good matchup for him. And a little Josh Naylor with it. I hope I'm right.
All right. That's going to do it here for prediction time. As always, you can check us out on Twitter for FOF Fish on First. You can always check out Aram and his Twitter. You can check the guys over there at Just Baseball. That's going to do it with us here. I'm Daniel, Eli, Nate, Alex Carver, Aram Lane, Isaac, and Ken Baral at the ballpark. This is FOF Live, presented by the fans. Go Fish.
Fish on First has partnered with About the Fans to launch a merchandise collection. Rep the FOF logo in more Marlins-inspired apparel. Find it all at aboutthefans.com. Enter coupon code FOF10 at checkout to get 10% off your order. FOF10 for a 10% discount.